Why rollerblading died?
This video is brought to you by Squarespace. In the 90s, rollerblading was the fastest growing sport on planet Earth. Completely
rollerblading was pretty
all of the
cool.
other extreme sports of the time. At its peak, the sport had 29.1 million participants.
Holy
This kid has
shit.
been as a pro since he was 9 years old. Oh! Wow!
Whereas around the same time, skateboarding had just 4.5 million
No
and
fucking way,
snowboarding
what?
3.8 million. Rollerblading was everywhere. Films, televisions, competitions, it was massive.
I find that
And
very
then
hard to
it
believe.
completely died. The competitions disappeared, all the sponsorships had dried up, and these wealthy, famous rollerbladers were forced to quit and go get a job at their local Tesco.
Rollerblading
In just
didn't die?
10 years, this thriving new sport
That
had
was
completely
sad to
failed.
read.
And in today's video,
It is
we're going to
super dead.
explore how the hell this all happened.
Thanks, Risa Paulson.
Alright, so to set the scene, it's the 80s. The world as we know it is completely changing. Times Man of the Year was awarded to a computer.
I miss
the
soaping,
culture-defining
yeah.
MTV has just been launched. And amongst the
Soaping
big hair,
was ahead
neon
of its time.
tracksuits and overly synthesized music, the new craze
Use
of
some
roller
cybernetics
skating
core.
had started to gain some popularity. Between the 70s and the 80s, there was the invention of the roller disco, where basically you'd strap on some roller skates and listen to some music and have a little boogie, which I know sounds
God, this
pretty
shit
lame,
was
but it's
fun.
good especially if you got a few pints in you. You're golden. However, the roller skate was about to change. After two brothers and hockey enthusiasts, Scott and Brendan Olsen, came along. They were at their local sports store one day and they found a model of a rollerblade. It was slightly different. Rollerblades usually having wheels sort of adjacent to each other. This skate was just a straight line of wheels, now known as an inline skate. And they very quickly realised that this was the perfect thing for when ice hockey is out of season, as the wheels were straight, much like an ice skate.
Everything's the same except for the ice surface.
Scott and Brenny went home and they descended into their
So they just
dark,
stole the
dingy
idea?
basement. And in a sort of Dexter's Laboratory fashion, they didn't emerge until they came out with the perfect inline skate. This new skate was equipped with polyurethane rollers, a rubber heel stop, and it was perfect for maneuvering fast and quickly on any terrain. And there was one more thing that they had emerged from their dark dungeon with. A very simple but memorable business name, Rollerblade.
Oh, they
In the
were
early days of
actually named
The target
Rollerblade.
audience was like skiers and ice skaters to kind of give them something to do when it was off season. And it was pretty popular. Sales
That's
were good for this
interesting.
very niche market. And in 1986, the inline industry was valued at $7 million. But then disaster struck for the Olsen brothers. One of their mates, who was supposed to be their accountant, had started to fiddle with the money a little bit and embezzled $100,000, meaning that the company was in hot water and the Olsen brothers faced bankruptcy. But then a man by the name of Robert Naegeli swooped in to save the day. And by that, I mean, he
Robert.
took them for an absolute
Good man.
ride. Originally, he offered them $1.5 million for just half the company. But then this guy absolutely shafted them. He got them down to $100,000 for
Did you say ground zero?
95% of the company. And over the years, as the Olsen brothers became more and more desperate for cash, they ended up selling for a 1% royalty of the company that would last 10 years. These new owners brought with them a brand new marketing strategy, and that was to turn it into a cool, hip and trendy fad. And so they decided to target the cool, hip and trendy place of California, being the same region that saw the birth of surfboarding and skateboarding. If there was any place on earth that would pay stupid money
No.
for the latest trend, it was California. And the plan paid off. Rollerblading
So not much
swept
has changed.
California in the mid to late 80s. Pretty much everyone owned a pair of rollerblades. So much so that the term rollerblade
Thanks for the
basically
bits,
became a generic
Dom.
name for inline skating.
Oh, I didn't see that one. Thank you, Don.
You see, something was missing. Rollerblading of the
I'm sorry to hear
80s
that,
was,
Cannibal. That's
to
awful.
put it bluntly, extremely lame.
Rollerblades the creator, not the imitator. With these, homeboy, you're gonna skate greater. If you see me out there, you better be aware, cause I just might be coming from out of the air.
It was tied in with the image of like wealthy Californian yuppies, wearing neon-coloured spandex that was so tightly fitted you'd look like a piece of meat wrapped in cling film. Rollerblading was clean, happy-go-lucky, it was sanitized. It had absolutely no edge to it. It was about as edgy as the Teletubbies, and as an
Nice, you give
activity,
some
it was
heaven
mainly
sword.
done in like a dancey fashion or just to cruise around.
I'm already
But
seeing how
Rollerblade, the
rollerblading
company,
died.
They didn't mind because they were selling rollerblades. But Rollerblade did put together like an official team, a bunch of personalities and talented rollerbladers to help push and promote rollerblade. There was this one guy called Bruce Jackson who was just an absolute head case.
Aggravator, you know when you gotta blow out some steam. Just going inverted, like, bam! Getting those huge airs and just having a blast, you know what I mean?
And the whole team were basically just caricatures of Californian lifestyle. Then rollerblading began to change. Instead of just cruising around and spinning in circles on flat grounds, rollerbladers started to incorporate ramps.
Wow, look at
jumps.
those tricks.
The rollerblade team would actually start to get better and do some kind of cool things. But then very quickly, the whole game would get completely flipped on its head.
That was cool.
And that was due to the rise of a very similar sport, skateboarding.
Yeah.
Before we go any further, I want to shout out Squarespace for sponsoring today's
I
video.
imagine Rodney Mullen single-handedly
Squarespace is the
killed
only platform
rollerblading
you'll
by
need
making
to make
skateboarding
high-quality
so cool.
Been around for a while. It was a massive fad in the 60s and then completely died in 1965. And the sport went completely underground. With no money in the sport, only the true OGs stuck with it. And the decline lasted all the way up until about the 80s, where we'd begin to see brands like Vans and Thrasher, who would basically pioneer this subculture, complete with the distinct fashion of like baggy jeans, skate shoes, and as well music, like the sort of skate punk genre that was very popular. But the cherry on the cake was the anti-establishment attitude. Skateboarding rebelled against the happy-go-lucky, clean image of the 80s. And as we entered the early 90s, skateboarding
roller skating doesn't look very cool now that I see the old 80s footage.
Famous skaters, it was massive. This extreme sport that parents feared became the new rock and roll. And so if you can imagine all that hard work the skateboarders put in, the struggle to build the industry, being constantly told to get a job because skateboarding's for losers. And then rollerblading came along and said, cheers lads, we'll take it from here. The rollerblading community completely overtook skateboarding in a very short time.
Rollerbladers are the grunge aficionados of sports fashion.
By the mid to early 90s, there was 24 million participants that were rollerbladers. Compare that to skateboarding's measly 4.5 million.
I'm super curious. Is there like rollerblading tournaments? Like today? Let's see. I don't even know what I type in. Winter Clash 2020 Pro Finals Aggressive Inline Skating Contest. Aggressive inline skating. Is such a thing even possible? What do you do? Just like skate with a frown? I know roller derby, that's not the same. Fuck, he's getting mean! Oh. I feel like there's some cool shit you can do with roller skates. Roller skates allow you to go backwards, and I bet you could do some really fucking cool tricks. It's so crowded. It's kind of popping off. Oh, you blew it. You can go backwards on skateboards and call it a fakie. You know what I mean, though. Like, for example, like, I don't remember what game, but there was a game, like a roller skating PlayStation 2 game or some shit. You could go off the half pipe and then you come back down backwards, go off it backwards, and then you do like a front flip and shit. Of course I remember soaping. He's a prime stepsister. I mean, it doesn't look lame. I thought that was gonna look really, really fucking lame. But it didn't. FISE Chengdu 2017 semifinal replay. Oh my god, this is an hour long. Thought it said a minute. There's the Prime Duke.
And so all of this led to a bit of a beef, but we'll go more into that later in the video. The early 90s for rollerblading saw not
Thanks,
only the
Resub King
sport
Sea-Dog.
explode, but the skill level went nuts. Like in 10 years, people went from spinning around in circles wearing lycra shorts to launching themselves across like 20-foot gaps. In 1991, Chris Edward would become the first ever person to grind down a rail, which would completely open the floodgates to the skill of grinding. And again, much like skateboarding, there would be video parts that would come out. One of the early iconic ones was in 93 with Dare to Air, which in the beginning scene,
Cool
they
name.
acknowledged the lame image of
Thanks to Prime
rollerblading
Banana,
that
the
exists in
resub
the
Nori.
80s.
It's for hardcore skaters, right? Like me. See, I'm the number. No, shut up.
And basically shunned it, saying that disco is out and that rollerblading was freaking hardcore, bro.
Whoa!
This video would showcase the lifestyle, attitudes, and skill of these young lads who are quickly becoming stars in the world of rollerblading. In 1993, the magazine Daily Bread was launched, becoming the voice of this style of rollerblading,
Cool
which
name.
was now dubbed aggressive inline. And then
Oh,
it
Jesus
got
Christ.
even crazier.
That's such a dumb
Participation
name.
numbers for inline skating went from 23.9 million in 1995 up to 29.1 million rollerbladers worldwide in 1997, making it the fastest growing sport on planet Earth. The market
And I
was showing
remember
the effect of this
rollerbladers
insane
and
rise in
skaters
rollerblading.
hated
From being
each
a
other.
$10 to $12 million market
They
in
hated each other.
1988, up to $60 million in 1990, and by 91 it was now a $200 million industry, and then it would peak in 1994 at $650 million.
Holy
with Rollerblade,
shit.
the company, taking up a good majority share of the market size, which some good news for them Olsen brothers that I
Thanks
told
for
you about at the
resub,
beginning.
Andy.
Their 1% actually made them about $10 million. But as for the culture of rollerblading, more and more video parts would be released, like these hour-long videos. Hoax 1 came
resub,
out and it
Kings.
pushed Arlo Eisenberg and Brooke Howard-Smith into the spotlight. And it would be Hoax 2 that would really give an identity
Watch
to
scooters
rollerblading.
versus
Arlo and Brooke
skateboards.
went on to found the pretty infamous brand of Senate.
Obviously, the reason we have the name Senate is because we wanted a name that sounded powerful, but also that was corrupt.
Senna brought with it a kind of
Alright.
bad boy image to rollerblading,
Thanks
and
for
very
resub,
quickly
Poop Sock.
became the face of the sport. In 1994, they started putting out t-shirts, and they made about 1.7k. Jump forward to 1996, and they sold 750,000 t-shirts, which made them about $13.5
Oh my
million
God.
between 96 and 97. This was largely thanks to a massive marketing backlash.
Is causing all kinds of controversy tonight. They slipped in a slogan on their clothes that reads, "Destroy all girls."
So here's what all the excitement's about.
Senate clothing designer Arlo Eisenberg shows us where to find the slogan, "Destroy all girls."
And like overnight, every single news outlet across America picked up the story.
What the fuck?
Rollerblading now became the devil. It was countercultural, it was edgy. Gone were the days of the spandex-clad roller disco image. Now it was hardcore. And by that, I mean your parents hated it, which obviously made it really cool and you wanted to do it. But it was 1994, which was largely considered the year that rollerblading blew up. With record sales, it started to attract the mainstream market. Nike had their own rollerblade company called Bauer, and ESPN created the
Oh, I remember
iconic
Bauer.
X Games.
Wait,
The X Games was
rollerblading
created in large part to capitalize
led to
on
the
success
creation of
rollerblading
X
and all
Games?
the other trendy extreme sports that were popular at the time.
holy
The
fuck.
success of extreme sports in the
He's a
90s I
prime
find
turtle.
very interesting. Like skateboarding with Thrasher and Vans. Rollerblading had the same with Senna, Medium, Mind Game, all of these brands. They found an authentic way to like speak to the youth, which just saying that sentence makes me feel like a 50-year-old man. But it's true though, like the 90s advertisement was all corny, inauthentic, and just weird.
Man, I got a split.
And kids didn't resonate with it, but
Thanks
when
to
they saw
Prime Wendigo.
Arlo and Brooke, they could see themselves in these rollerbladers. They were just like them. So they wanted to represent Senna
Thanks to Resub
proudly,
Bin.
because Senna got who they
Prime
were.
Art is
Sorry,
its
I
own
didn't see that.
justification.
The
I don't
Prime
care what
Banana.
anyone's rules are.
If it's the law, it's
I don't. That's what I'm
Okay,
telling
we
you. If
can
the
slip it.
law
Hear me
doesn't
out.
mean anything, if the law is bullshit, then I'm not going to adhere to it.
But with this coolness, now that makes me sound old. Every company and film wanted a piece of it. Pop culture became flooded with references to rollerblading. Films were made like Prayer for the Roller Boys, Airborne, the music video Bop even had rollerbladers. MTV, back when it was cool, they were constantly showing rollerbladers, like their lives, all the stunts they do.
I'm from John Green from Warwick, Rhode Island.
This is my Scar story.
And on top of that,
Scarred,
X Games
that's what I was
become a
just
worldwide phenomenon,
talking
pushing
about.
extreme sports to the forefront of culture. There was the two Yasutaku brothers who would just do mind-blowing stuff on the vert ramp, like double flips, big spins, big air, you name it.
You know, coming into this event, everyone thought that Eito was pretty much a sure thing. 1080.
See, that's what I mean. That shit right there, like,
And the street skaters
the
have
hitting
gone
it back,
nuts.
the
Legends such
backwards
as
shit.
Eric Perkett,
Cool.
one of his most iconic moments was when he jumped down 2 sets of like 12 stairs. I mean, that boy must have traveled like 30+ foot. There was Brian Aragon
Holy
and the
fuck.
iconic Chris Haffey.
I don't remember any of these names.
Like, looking back at this footage, I seriously can't get over the skill level of these guys in the 90s. Like, I was sort of unaware about some of the things that they were doing. Because there was so much money in it, it incentivized rollerbladers to just push and push the level so that they might stand out and get a sponsorship. Rollerbladers were happy, investors were happy, but there was one group who weren't so happy. And that was skateboarders. Like, no joke,
Yeah,
throughout the
the
90s,
war.
skateboarders hated rollerbladers' guts. Like, I mean, there were physical fights between the two. There was no end of insults, and effectively, skateboarding went to war with rollerblading.
Hello, I'm Johnny Knoxville, and this is Belt Sander Skates.
They would make these parody videos of rollerbladers. The skateboarding magazine Big Brother interviewed Arlo Eisenberg, basically just clowning on him the whole issue.
Scooter
And they even
kids
put,
are the
like,
new
this Steve
rollerblade
Irwin parody
kids?
video out.
Are
And look,
they?
it definitely does sound very petty, especially now. There were a few gripes that skateboarders legitimately had against rollerbladers. Firstly, rollerbladers were kind of just seen as kids who'd get in the way at the skate park. They would take up space, they would put too much wax on the coping, and they were annoying. Secondly, they also called themselves skaters at that time. And lastly, and I think really what was the core of this beef, was that rollerblading never had to struggle for its success. These kids would just pop up and become rich, successful rollerbladers overnight, which was only really possible because of this like extreme sport industry that skateboarding helped develop, which took them like 20
Well, it seems like
years. Skateboarders had
rollerblading
no
really
end of insults
developed
for
it.
rollerbladers. But it didn't matter, right? At the end of the day, rollerblading was still going strong, wasn't it? Well, toward the end of the 90s, rollerbladers were at their all-time best. The skill level was nuts, more and more films made references to rollerblading. There was a rollerblading video game.
Oh, this is the game I was thinking
Despite that,
about.
things started to take a turn. And for the first
Hey,
time
fuck
ever,
yeah.
in 1997, the market started to
That was
falter. The secondary
convenient.
brands to rollerblade, which was K2 and First Team. K2 had experienced a 15% drop in sales, and First Team had experienced a 36% drop in sales. Nike fully jumped ship and sold their brand Bauer. People
Is
were
there some
trying to get
skeleton?
out quick whilst the bubble looked like it was popping. By 2004, it was reported that the participation levels had fallen down to 17.3 million, which is a significant drop from the 29.1 at its peak. More and more companies were closing up shop, but then the axe fell on rollerblading's neck. In 2005, the X Games decided to pull any and all events featuring
No,
rollerblading.
wait, what?
This was the final straw for rollerblading. With no X
Aw.
Games to show off their sponsors, all the sponsors pulled out. More and more of the magazines and the brands folded. And basically, the arse end fell out of the sport. That was it. It was over. Pros were forced to quit and just find
Damn it.
regular jobs. Kids were ditching the rollerblades for skateboards. The ride was up. And the
What about
sport just
soaping?
fell off of the face of the earth. Now, you may be wondering, why did it die? Well, there's a couple of theories, ranging from 9/11 to masculinity, which seems to be every modern journalist
Did 9/11 kill rollerblading?
for all of life's problems. There was from 9 die. Well, there's a couple
I
of
wanna
theories,
read the post.
ranging from 9/11.
Wow. You know, when I really think about it, maybe 9/11 did kill rollerblading. Huh. Damn.
To masculinity, which seems to be every modern journalist's answer for all of life's problems. There was a whole documentary called Barely Dead, which I'd really recommend watching, which was made by rollerbladers talking about this subject. But the documentary kind of lost me when they started talking about this grand conspiracy, where all the skateboarding industries plotted to take down rollerblading. I'm just
Oh, there's a
picturing Tony
conspiracy?
Hawk in a dimly lit poker table with a Cuban cigar, chuckling to himself how he's gonna destroy rollerblading.
What if he did, though?
And like, yeah, whilst these theories are kind of wacky, they do pose some interesting ideas. There was this image put on rollerbladers to try
Is
and
it prime
outcast them
wood?
from like extreme sports.
One homophobic joke killed you. What's the hardest thing about rollerblading? Telling your parents that you're gay. That one little joke, the whole fucking thing The whole thing went away. I never understood it.
And this constant rallying against rollerblading would affect its image. It was seen as uncool, and it was cool to hate on it. But then some people present a more simple reason as to why it didn't last.
I can't imagine
it was a
that's
pain in the
why.
ass to wear the rollerblades. You know, like say you wanted to buy a drink from a shop. You'd have to sit on the
Thanks for your
floor,
sub, Bosco.
unbuckle your rollerblades, pull your spare pair of shoes out your bag, put them on, tie the shoelaces, and by the time you're done, the shop's closed. And there probably is something to all of these theories as to why
Thanks for Prime
rollerblading
Stock.
died. But to me, I think it's much simpler than all of that. And that is that it was a fad. And to be honest, the more I've been making these videos, looking into these different cultures, there's a very similar pattern that almost happens to all of them. When a sport's new, it has a great 10 years, does really well. Every company wants a piece of the pie, it gets more and more inflated, and then the times change, culture changes, the kids grow up, and brands like Senate just didn't appeal to people in like the early 2000s. They were on to the next thing. And the things that were cool in the 90s,
That's why you
were
should
seen as
only
corny in
get
the
hype about
2000s.
video
Like if you go back
games,
to the
'cause
early
they're
2010s
forever.
and you listen to the music from then, and the fashion, a
They'll
lot of that
always
just
be
it looks
gamers.
ridiculous now. And I think the reason it was so shocking was because it got so big. It came at the right time with the introduction of extreme sports. So when it crashed, it really crashed. And here we are now, 20 years on, 2021. And you know, that might not be necessarily a bad thing. Right now is actually an extremely interesting time for rollerblade. After the market was in downfall for the last 20 years, Rollerblade actually reported a 300% increase in sales. May of 2020 was the company's largest shipping of rollerblades in 20 years. And Google search trends mirror this growth. A lot of people speculate that this is in large part due to the lockdowns. And whilst that definitely did play a role, I think there's this general shift that's happening in society right now. People are getting nostalgic about the 90s. Like for instance, 90s fashion has been in style for a while now. And hit films of the 90s like Space Jam and The Matrix are now seeing remakes. Even in the music, like Machine Gun Kelly is like punk rock, as well Olivia Rodrigo. Who's to say that people aren't just getting a bit nostalgic and they want to slap on some rollerblades? And on top of that, skateboarding is no longer counterculture. It's very much culture. It's popular. If a kid wants to stand out and be different, rollerblading might be that. But making this video, the thing I was most happy to see, rollerbladers
Not
are
the
still
biggest
out there,
fan of
and they're still
90s
killing it.
fashion
You've
coming
got the
back.
OG
90s
guys
fashion
like
is the
Brian
fucking
Harrigan.
best. Don't you ever say that again. 90s fashion is fucking incredible. Do you remember... Well, there was a guy... Oh, what the fuck is his name? He was a pop star. He was like the epitome of 90s fashion. I always used to bring him up when people talked about it. Fuck, what was his name? Thanks to resub Matsuzaki. Was it Lance Bass? From NSYNC? Let me see. No. No, point is, 90s fashion fucking slaps. 90s fashion is the goddamn best. Or maybe I just missed
Still
the 90s.
kicking around. Chris Haffey doing stuff with Nitro Circus.
When I first saw Omega Ramp, I was like, I have to get on that thing.
But then you've got the new gen, like Bobby Spazzo, Nils Janssen, Eugene Enin, who is particularly one of my favorites. He's got a very cool, unique style. From the UK, you've got Sam Crofts, who's out here like still sending big stuff.
This video didn't even talk about rocket power.
From the parkour world,
Good
Daniel
point.
Willabaka got involved with Rollerblade not that long ago, and he was sending some pretty meaty stuff. You've got brands out here still regularly putting out Rollerblade videos that get decent views. And like I said in the Slackline video, I do think they need more YouTube-y kind of content. If you take Braille, every time Braille makes a rollerblading video, they just pop off. Those videos work because they show the
Thanks, Resub
people
Archie.
who do rollerblading. It's not just insane stunts edited to music, but you're there with them. So personally, I do think rollerblading is about to have a second surge. Probably won't hit the heights of the 90s, but
I like
that ain't what it's
Braille.
all about.
I
And
also
I
like
can't
Braille. I
lie,
think they're a
making
good
this video
channel.
has made me want to buy some rollerblades. So let's see where it goes from here. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel.
That was well made. Though, yeah, he did fail to mention rocket power. Fucking half of rocket power took place on rollerblades.